The sound came first. Dara Messing heard it in her sleep, a low, thrumming pulse, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. She told herself it was the pipes. New houses always had their voices. You just had to learn them. They'd moved in on a Tuesday in late March, which was the kind of unglamorous detail that would matter later. No ceremony. Her husband Joel carried boxes while she unpacked, and their daughter Wren wandered the rooms, touching the walls, like she was reading something written there in a language she couldn't quite name. The apartment was too small. Wren slept in the living room, her little bed pushed against the bookshelf, and at night, Dara could hear her daughter's breathing from anywhere in the place. The closet under the stairs was enormous. That was the first thing wrong with it. A loft this size had no business hiding a space that deep. Dara had walked into it and lost the far wall for a moment before her eyes adjusted. Joel had shrugged it off. Joel shrugged most things off these days. He'd been shrugging for about 14 months, which was how long they'd been struggling, and Dara had stopped counting the moments she caught herself wondering whether it was the money or marriage that had gone first. It was Wren who found the water. She'd gone into the closet looking for her missing sneaker and come out wet. Not dripping, just damp, like she'd walked through fog. She held up her palm and said, very matter-of-factly, "There's something in there," like she'd found a spider. Dara went in with a flashlight. The back wall wasn't a wall. It looked like water. It moved like water, slow, vertical ripples, the kind you see in a rain puddle when a truck rolls by. But it stood upright, filling the closet's rear wall from floor to ceiling, and when Dara pressed 2 fingers against it, they passed through into cold darkness and came back smelling of salt and something older than salt, something she had no word for. She pulled her hand back and stood there for a long moment in the dark, with the flashlight beam caught in the surface like it was caught inside a prism. She didn't tell Joel that night. She told him the next morning, and he went in immediately because that was Joel. No hesitation, no fear, just the practical forward motion that she'd mistaken for confidence when they were young. He came out with his shirt soaked to the chest and his eyes bright in a way she hadn't seen in over a year. "It's cold," he said, "and dark. But there's something down there. Down or far? I don't know. It felt like depth." He started spending time at the library. Dara would find his notes on the kitchen table in the mornings. Tidal patterns, atmospheric pressure readings, species distribution in deep-sea trenches. He borrowed money from her brother without telling her. She found the receipt for the diving equipment in the pocket of his jacket when she was doing laundry. Regulator BCD vest twin tanks, the kind of setup people used for cave diving. They were not cave divers. They were a copywriter and a part-time art teacher with a 7-year-old and $11,000 in credit card debt. She confronted him on a Thursday evening while Wren slept. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, and she looked at the man she'd married and tried to find the place where the person she'd known had gotten lost in all this machinery of desperation. "You're not going in," she said. "Dara, we don't know what it is. We don't know what's on the other side. You've got a daughter sleeping 15 feet from that thing, which is exactly why I have to go in." He said it quietly, not as a challenge, because what if it's something? What if it's the thing that changes everything? She didn't have an answer for that. She'd stopped believing in things that changed everything around the same time he'd lost his job. She started going in herself, not deep, just far enough to feel the pressure change, far enough to hold her breath and open her eyes and see that it was not ocean, not any ocean she recognized. The light that reached her through the membrane was wrong. The angle was wrong. The color was wrong, a deep green violet that she'd never seen in any water on Earth, the kind of color that exists at frequencies the eye wasn't meant to hold. And there were shapes. Slow shapes, at the far edge of visibility. Not fish, not anything she had a category for. Then one came closer. She came back through the membrane at speed, stumbling into the closet's familiar darkness, and sat on the floor with her back against the shelving and her heart going like something caged. She sat there for 4 minutes. She counted before she stopped shaking. It had looked at her. Whatever it was, it had turned toward her and looked at her with something that was not eyes the way she understood eyes, but was unmistakably looking. She felt looked at in the way you feel it when someone sees you clearly all the way through. She didn't go back the next day, but something else came through. Wren found it before anyone else. She came to Dara in the kitchen, holding her hand out with an expression not of fear but of intense, scientific interest, the same expression she made when she found a beetle. In her palm lay a small object, flat and irregular, perhaps the size of a domino. It was made of something not quite glass and not quite stone, and it was warm, and on its surface was a pattern that kept almost resolving into something meaningful before it shifted. It was by the closet door, Wren said. Dara took it from her daughter and felt the warmth transfer into her hands. It reminded her of something she couldn't name, the particular warmth of a hand you've been holding a long time. Over the next week, more objects appeared, never inside the apartment, always in the threshold, in the gap between the closet door and the hallway floor, or balanced on the doorknob on the inside. Small things, strange things. A coil of something that hummed faintly when Dara held it. A fragment of something else that cast a small shadow shaped differently than its own shape. A smooth sphere that, when held up to light, showed the apartment itself from outside, a view they didn't have, from an angle that didn't exist. Whatever was on the other side of the membrane had been watching them longer than they'd been watching it. The realization should have been terrifying. Dara turned it over in her mind for 2 days, waiting for the terror to arrive. It didn't. What arrived instead was something closer to recognition, the strange, sheepish feeling of being caught, of having your clumsy curiosity met with patient amusement. Joel wanted to cross. He'd assembled his gear in the bedroom. He'd been practicing his breath-hold times in the bathtub. Dara watched him and understood that he had turned this alien threshold into the thing that was going to save them from debt, from distance, from the slow sediment of disappointment that had been settling over their marriage for over a year. He had made it into a rescue mission. She understood this because she had almost done the same thing. She went into the closet alone 2 days before he planned to go in. No dive gear, no flashlight, just herself in jeans and a sweatshirt, and the small flat object with its shifting pattern that she'd been carrying in her pocket since Wren found it. She stood at the membrane and pressed her palm flat against its surface and waited. Movement on the other side, the slow shapes reorganizing. One of them came close, then closer. It pressed against the membrane from the other side, and Dara could feel the pressure of it, something vast and unhurried, and she thought of the ocean the way you think of it from shore. The sheer, accumulated weight of a thing that has existed longer than you can hold in your mind. She held up the flat object. She pressed it against the membrane. The membrane breathed. That was the only word she had for it. A slow exhalation, a vibration that passed through the wall and through her palm and into her chest, finding the frequency of her heartbeat and matching it exactly once. Then the object disappeared from her hand. Not taken. Returned. She understood the difference. She understood it the way you understand a word you've never learned, but that your body already knows. She came out of the closet and sat on the hallway floor with her back against the door. Wren found her there later. Wren sat beside her, without asking questions. That was her daughter's particular genius, the knowledge of when questions weren't the right tool. They sat together in the hallway, listening to the sound of Joel on the phone in the bedroom, trying to get a meeting with someone, anyone, about what he had and what it might be worth. Dara listened to her daughter's breathing and thought about the shape on the other side of the membrane, how vast it had felt, how unhurried, how it had pressed its weight against the surface, not with force, but with a kind of attention that felt like the opposite of violence. She thought about the objects, left in the threshold. Always the threshold. It had never tried to come through. She thought about the word Joel kept using, opportunity. She thought about the word the director of the film she'd loved at 19 had once used in an interview she'd read in college. The director said he was interested in what happened when the extraordinary arrived and found the ordinary completely unequal to it. She'd written that line down. She'd lost the notebook. She was not unequal to this. She wanted to be clear about that. She was scared and tired, and her marriage was struggling, and she was 2 months behind on a bill she hadn't told Joel about. But she was not unequal to the fact of another mind, another life, enormous and patient, pressing itself gently against the membrane between its world and hers, and leaving small warm objects at the threshold, the way you leave something for a neighbor you don't yet. No. She got up and went into the bedroom where Joel was on the phone, and she sat on the edge of the bed and waited. He read her expression when he hung up, and his voice changed. "You went in again." "I didn't go in," she said. "I just listened." "Dara, I think it's been watching us a long time," she said. "I think it knows we're afraid of it, and I think it's been waiting to see what we do about that." Joel was quiet for a moment. The particular quality of his silence had changed. It wasn't the shrugging silence anymore, the deflecting silence. It was the silence of a man who was listening. "What do you want to do about it?" he asked. She thought about the warmth of the object in her hand. She thought about the membrane breathing, matching her heartbeat exactly once, in the dark, under the stairs of their too small apartment. "I want to go back to the threshold," she said. "Not cross it. Just be there. Let it see that we can be there without needing it to be something we can use. That's it? That's a lot," she said. He thought about that for a long moment. Then slowly something in his face unlocked, not resolved, not fixed, but opened, the way a door opens, the way a membrane lets 2 fingers through and gives them back smelling of salt and something older than salt. "Okay," he said. Wren was already asleep when they went together to the closet. They opened the door and stood in the dark, the 3 of them, because Wren had woken up and followed them in silence, and neither of them had sent her back, and that felt right in a way neither of them could articulate. The membrane moved, slow and vertical, violet-green and impossible. Something pressed against it from the other side. Something vast and patient and curious, the way all vast and patient things are curious, not dangerously, not hungrily, but the way a hand pressed against glass is curious about the world on the other side of it. Wren raised her hand and pressed her palm flat against the surface. The membrane breathed. Dara put her hand beside her daughter's. Joel put his beside hers. The sound came again. That low thrumming pulse felt more than heard, moving through the wall and through their palms and into their chests, finding the frequency of 3 heartbeats and matching each of them one at a time exactly once. They stood there in the dark at the threshold of an impossible world, and they did not cross, and they were not crossed, and the thing on the other side of the membrane did not leave. It simply remained, as it had remained, patient and enormous, learning the shape of a species that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, in its better moments, knew the difference between a door and a weapon. The sound held, the membrane held, the family held. Outside, the city made its ordinary noise. Somewhere in the apartment, a pipe ticked, the refrigerator hummed. All the small mechanisms of an ordinary life going on. In the closet, a child's hand pressed flat against the surface of something that had no name yet, and the surface pressed back, and neither side flinched. That was enough. For tonight, it was enough.